Welcome to the Ultimate Gamer Podcast, a show that features conversations with the trailblazers, thought leaders, decision makers, and investors who are defining the gaming and esports space. On the Ultimate Gamer Podcast, we take a journey into this dynamic industry and start to decode and reveal who and what's making news. It's about connecting, and it's about sharing the stories and vision of the people who make gaming and esports a global phenomenon. And now, please welcome your host, student of the game and connector to the esports community, Tommy Knapp.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tommy Knapp, and this is an all-new episode of the Level Up Podcast presented by The Ultimate Gamer. On today's show, I have a conversation with Erin Ashley Simon, TV anchor and host of the Grassroots Podcast. She was co-host of Cheddar Esports, a daily esports and gaming show, and is currently signed to CAA as a media journalist and content strategist. We started with me telling Erin she's my Snoop Dogg, and then shifted our conversation to Erin's parents and their support of her choosing her own path and even becoming a Renaissance woman. She then talked about the Grassroots Podcast her and a couple of her friends started that kickstarted her career in front of the camera. She made some moves within her network and then eventually opened a door to the NBA 2K League and AT&T as an influencer. She continued to hone her craft and spoke to mentors and legends in media and broadcasting while she kept pushing forward. Timing and chemistry landed her role at Cheddar Esports as a co-host, where she shared the big gaming stories of the day, interviewed top players and executives, and played games. I can see that she's just starting to peak and has much bigger plans for the future, a role that has her both in front of and behind the camera. Join me now for Erin Ashley Simon.
All right, cool. So for you, it's got to be, first of all, I want to tell you it's very exciting because Cheddar Esports, for me, Cheddar was like one of the places that I always used to go to. Yeah. And I say used to because I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or if the show's on at different times, but I don't think you're on anymore. But I would watch you and Jimmy like every single night. And when I didn't watch, I would actually tape it. And my wife would be like, why are you watching the show all the time? Because these guys are really good. You guys gave a lot of really good information.
Yeah. So fortunately, Cheddar Esports is no longer up and running because of just everything that's been and financial impact of just COVID-19. But I mean, the good thing is like it's been great to see the impact our program has had. Even if for the short amount of time it's been around, it's been great just to like see that we've established a credibility, but then also established like a program that is not only very educated, informative in terms of the esports space, but then it's also a nice entryway for those who are new to the scene to come in.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy for me because I saw at one point that you interviewed like Snoop. And I don't know if that was on Cheddar or if that was someplace else. But for you, when you interviewed Snoop, you must have felt like, I know this guy already, even though he probably didn't know you at that point, right? But you go into it feeling like you know him because you've seen him all over. You listen to his music. And you're my Snoop in a way. Right? Because we haven't met yet. Yeah, because we haven't met yet. But I feel like I know you and I met Jimmy at the Fortnite World Cup.
Okay, nice.
Back in the day. And I'm very good friends with Joey Brander, so I know Joey's on the show quite a bit too.
Oh yeah, Joey B always came on. What was it? Once a month, he would always come on to the show. Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's just about because even for me, right? Even though like I personally like don't know Snoop or just any of the people I've interviewed, and I've come to know some of them, but as part of my profession, it's important for me to make whoever the guest is feel comfortable and make it seem like as if I know them for the viewers, because that's that connection point that allows people to connect with those people on a human level. So I'm happy that you're able to see that, and also like it's very cool then to have someone say that to me. I'm like, oh wow, this is awesome.
Right? Yeah. So if you can, because this will help me too. I saw that you went to UK. I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit. But if like kind of rewind things and talk about how you got into esports and gaming and your career path, so we have a really good idea because really when I say this, and there's a lot of people, Darcy Lawrence, who you may know, and Joey, and I mean, there's just so many people that I've spoken to already that know so much about their specific area in esports specifically. But you're a journalist, you're a host. And so you have done what I'm doing now. You've done it for 2, 3, 4 years, and you've interviewed, and you know so much about the space, and not just the business side, but the competitive side as well. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, just rewind and talk about how you grew up, because you are a gamer. I haven't actually seen you game like in the show. So if you could just share with us some of that, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've been a gamer all my life. I mean, the first game that I played was Sonic the Hedgehog on Sega Genesis. My brother was my older brother was very instrumental in terms of me getting into video games. He was someone who I would play with all the time because, despite, there's some youth that don't know, but back then you actually had to play with someone who's sitting next to you. So I played with my brother a lot, and this was like a space for me to really not only express myself, but it was kind of like an area for me to decompress, because during that time when I was growing up, I was playing competitive soccer at a very high level. I was considered a top soccer player in my area in New Jersey, and so most of the time, while like all my friends are going to Cancun and going to all these other places, I literally was training here, going to tournaments, playing and training even more, and then and obviously my education and going to school and doing homework and stuff. And so for me, that downtime was me playing video games with my friends, whether it was my neighbors or my brother or anything like that. And parents have always.
What position did you play in soccer?
I was a striker, forward.
You're a striker.
Yeah. So I was small and super fast. Yeah.
Put the ball in the back of the net. I love it. So I have 2 kids, mine are 14, 11, and they both play striker and they play defense too. But they haven't played anything in the last 3 months. But yeah, that's awesome. And you were in Jersey, and then you went to Kentucky to play, because that's the ACC. That's big soccer country.
Yeah. So I started with, so funny enough, my first year I went to Rutgers University. I made the decision to stay closer to home, just because my mom deals with health issues. But then after, it was during that time when I made that shift into journalism, before I actually was attempting to major in kinesiology, because I was always so fascinated about human behavior, how humans worked. And so it was I had kinesiology also in psychology. But I made that shift because during that time I had my own website and blog, and I was interviewing, and I was like, I really enjoy helping people tell their stories and their perspectives. And then that's when it kind of like something that just started as something fun for me, then blew up and got to the point where I was getting recognition or seen by people at these big media platforms like ESPN and Fox Sports and stuff. And so I decided to make that shift. And with that shift, Rutgers, I don't know if it changed now, but back when I was, they only had a communications degree. And I was like, I want specifically a journalism degree. So when I decided to make that change, and it was partially educational move, it was also just, I just didn't feel like the Rutgers soccer program was best for me. And so I made that decision to transfer. And so I made sure that whatever school I was looking at had a really sound and good journalism department. And it just happened that I chose Kentucky because I have, I knew Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and his family. He went there to play basketball. One of my other friends, her name was Jessica, went there. And I had a few people, I knew more people who went to Kentucky versus some of the other universities. And so my mom not only liked the soccer program and liked the school and everything, but she also liked the fact that there's people there that can look after me, because even though it's like a few states away, it's still far enough that my parents just can't be there to help me in certain situations. So
yeah, did you look at Syracuse at all?
Yeah, I did. I looked at Syracuse.
I'm from Syracuse. That's where I'm from. So hence the orange, So.
Yeah, I did look at Syracuse. I looked at Syracuse. I looked at Maryland. I looked at Boston University. And I think there's a few other programs that I looked at as well. But yeah, Syracuse was one of them as well. Yeah. I didn't want to – for me, what kind of got Syracuse and BU out of the way was the weather. I'm just like –
Yeah. I never understand why anybody goes, to tell you the truth, because I'm from there. And I'm like, I won't go back. I live in Fort Lauderdale now, and I'm not going back. It's just the winters are – sometimes the winters are actually like 7 or 8 months. It's like a long time.
Yeah, and even though where I grew up, I'm originally from Jersey, and it's still cold here, but it's like that. It's like manageable cold, right? It would be like, it's crazy how there's a difference between Jersey and we don't now we don't get as much snow, and then in the Boston area or even up, it's like immense amount of snow. I'm like, I can't deal with that. Yeah. So I know myself well in that way. But yeah, I mean, my parents, like I said, my parents have always been super supportive. My stepdad actually created one of the earliest video games for the Commodore 64, and both my stepdad and even my dad and my mom, they're all in the technology and business and finance space. So it was never viewed upon as like a waste of time. I mean, the only thing my parents said is like, if you want to play video games, you better have good grades. And that was the only thing. Like I'm very, very, very fortunate to be raised in a household that was where my parents really supported any passions or interests that I have. My mom at the end of the day always wanted me to be quote unquote a Renaissance woman. Essentially she wanted to have a daughter and have kids that are have different knowledge and interests in different areas and allowing to expand, because she felt that by doing that allows me to become a better, well-rounded individual and also just a more empathetic and understanding person at the end of the day. And so
I think seek your passion, right? Seek the area that you want to go, and you're not being forced into something you don't want to do then.
Yeah. And part of that discovery platform in terms of to understand like what your passion is you actually have to do it. Right. So it's like allowing my parents allowed me to try different things in order for me to find what that passion is. And it's interesting because even going through all of that, like I never expected myself to work in esports and gaming. Like for the traditional route of media, you can work in business media, you can work in sports, like traditional sports, you can work in music. Like there's other industries and sectors that they have programs for, but they don't have any programs that really focus in on developing a career within the space of esports and gaming. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of one of those moments where I just honestly, like when people always ask me, how did you get into this space? I'm like, I just stumbled upon it. Like not stumbled upon esports because I knew about the competitive scene, but stumbled upon like opportunities that got me in there. Right. And the foundational things that I've learned just from journalism in general still apply to this space, but it's certain things that I had to learn and fine tune and adjust. But I never thought that when I went to the University of Kentucky that I'm like, yes, I'm going to Kentucky because I'm going to have a broadcast or journalism degree or experience in esports and gaming. And funny enough, I don't even have a broadcasting degree. I have a print and digital multimedia degree and a business minor. I did not go to school specifically for broadcasting. That's also something that I've learned just from the work that I've done behind the scenes on the production team, but then also I've learned by working with talent developers and just other individuals. So it's kind of like one of those things where, it's just, I think that I've stumbled into my purpose, and that also includes my passion. And that's essentially how it's been. I mean, excuse me?
I lost you for a second, but you're back.
Oh yeah. So it's just like it's interesting. Just my career, and it's crazy for me even to say like I'm 28 years old, but I've been in the media industry for 10 years. Like I started when I was like 16, 17. And so, just to see how it's transformed, not only as an industry, but also for myself, it's just kind of like one of those things where as long as you have these foundational skill sets, like you can pursue whatever passion you want. And I found an opportunity in gaming esports, and it's already something that I love. I love playing video games, and it matched with what I like. And I found a way to integrate other passions like culture and my passion for sports into this all-encompassing perspective and lane for myself. And that's pretty much how it's built out. And it's been, it's been working, it's been helping, it's been also allowing me to help others at the same time with my own personal experiences.
Well, when you stumbled into it, so you went to school, and again, right now, curriculum is just being built out. There's very few minors, majors, or any even certificates for esports and gaming. Yeah. However, that's going to change in the next 5 to 10 years, right? It's exploding. But how did you stumble? So you stumbled onto it, but you stumbled into a gig for a year and a half with Cheddar Esports, which was not just something that you did here and there. This was every single day of the week, right? 5 days a week, you guys were putting stories together. So how did you stumble into that? Was it just somebody that you knew at Cheddar, or did you actually have to send in a reel?
So funny enough, it started with from just how everything transpired. It started with me having my own podcast. So I have a podcast with my friends, and we film every episode, and doing that allowed me to be very much more comfortable in front of the camera, and also comfortable with relaying my own concise thoughts and opinions, and finding ways to communicate towards those who are watching. And from that, I covered the NBA 2K League for the first year, second year, and I mean, I still continue to cover it, but I started when it just started as well. And so I covered it from an editorial component in terms of digital and print. And so then from there, one of my friends, Jeff Eisen, let me backtrack a little bit. So there's this company I work for called the Shadow League, and my friend Kyle Harvey, he was the managing editor there. And he encouraged me, because we would have so many conversations about culture and gaming and just certain conversations around that. And he was like, why don't you write about it? And I was like, oh, yes. I never thought about writing about it. So I started to write about it with him helping to guide me. And so that helped me with landing an opportunity to cover the NBA 2K League. From there, I was covering consistently. I was going to the matches a lot. And then it transpired into my friend Jeff Eisenband, who was also covering the league. He was saying, hey, the NBA 2K League, they reached out to me. They want to do a Twitch show. We're looking for another host. Would you want to be part of it? So I said, sure. So I utilized the content from my podcast as a reel, because I didn't have a reel because I did production work behind the scenes and journalism work behind the scenes. So they used that. They're like, oh, she's really personable. Like she has a lot of personality and more on camera. So then I did that show. And then from there, I eventually ran into one of our producers for Cheddar Esports, Brandon, at Red Bull Conquest, their fighting game tournament in DC. And so I met Brandon via another friend. Her name is Amanda Stevens. And I straight up said to Brandon, hey, I don't know. I heard you guys have an esports program. I don't know if you're looking for other hosts. If you are, I would love to submit my info, and I would love to, apply and et cetera. So he was like, yeah, of course. Here's my email. So I literally right then and there, I emailed, and then I did a follow-up. And next thing you know, I got hit up by, her name is Barbara. She's part of the talent development and also talent, acquisition for Cheddar. And then eventually they schedule it where I did first a teleprompter read, and then we did like chemistry tests. And what I mean by chemistry tests is on-screen chemistry. So chemistry with Jimmy, chemistry with Zane, and just chemistry in terms of the flow of the conversation. Right. And so I did that for several weeks. And then they were like, hey, we would like to have you be part of our team. And so then that's kind of like the leading moments I've got to Cheddar. And then honestly from there, just me practicing and working with our talent developer and just getting better and really gelling with Jimmy and just anyone else who's in Zane. And eventually got to the point where I've built up the credibility for myself via that show. Because even before then, I knew about certain esports scenes, but I didn't know about every single one. Mm-hmm. And even on the show, I had no problem saying, like, I'm not as knowledgeable to speak on this. However, this is my viewpoint in terms of, like, this angle of it. Right. So, but over time, I've gotten to learn about every single competitive scene. And there's some I know better than others, but at least from a foundational standpoint, like, I know who the top players are. I know how certain things function. And so the value and the viewpoint that I brought, was something that people really enjoyed and liked. And so from there, it then went on to me being reached out by AT&T to be an influencer for them. And then got to the point where I felt like I needed an agent at a certain point. I felt like I've done enough within these 10, 11 years that I needed an agent. And so I was contacted. I contacted, and I was contacted by several agents, and I had so many conversations. And then that's when I felt like CAA would be the best one for me. And then it's like a trickling effect. And then more, there's been more broadcast opportunities. I've continued to just work on my chops, work on my skill sets, become better, and better. And with doing that, there's more opportunities that are coming. And it's been just growing and growing and growing in that capacity. And honestly, it's amazing how it started with me just creating a platform and content that I want to have with my friends, and then utilizing that and building on my skill sets and just working hard. And of course, connecting with the right people. That's gotten me to the point that I am right now.
Man, I wanted to say like 20 different things, but you're just on a roll. You're just going. So I just wanted to let you go. So I think that's really important what you said. You kind of went back to what I was going to ask you, your first question, because you were very proactive. And it sounds like that wasn't, when you started doing the podcast, that wasn't a paid gig. That was something you just wanted to do. And then that translated, because of what you did, that translated into an opportunity with the NBA 2K and then into Cheddar. So correct me if I'm wrong there. And then I wanted to kind of go back to what you talked about, chemistry, because was it just you, Zane, and Jimmy, or did you have to? My wife is an actor, so she's constantly having to, she has to go out all the time and do reads, and she has to go out, and I just can't. I couldn't imagine that life. What you did it with those guys, and I'm not saying one time or with just that group. She does it like, for every commercial she reads for every, and you get denied a lot. Yeah. But that chemistry part was a big part. And I actually just talked to Matt Hillman not that long ago, and he and Josh Hauer have a podcast. And he said their chemistry has been very natural from the beginning because they knew each other. So how did you, when you had that, because I think that's so important, and you guys did have great chemistry. So how did that work? And was that it? Was it just like, okay, Erin and Jimmy, Zane's over here, and you guys go, and then it worked, and it was like, okay, that's a wrap, and that we've got everybody we need for the show?
I think it's the chemistry part. You, as someone, and I'm sure maybe your wife can attest to this, but even as like a broadcaster, like it's also part of your job and responsibility to, as you're interviewing someone, you have to observe and read them. Like you have to understand, like, are they open more than they are closed off? You have to do icebreaker questions. You have to actively adapt yourself to that other person and find a way to adapt by still allowing you to be yourself, but then allowing that person to open up and be comfortable right away, right? So, Jimmy did the same thing. Like Jimmy, like for me, it took me a little bit, like it took me some time to just like really get to know Jimmy's style, his energy, how he responds to things, how he transitions. And then eventually it got to the point where we'd really, and part of it also was us actively taking the time to spend time with each other. Like not just at work, like Jimmy and I would hang out, me, Jimmy, Zane, even some of our other coworkers, we would hang out outside of work. So I got to understand who Jimmy was as a person, and allowing me to understand him as a person allows me to understand who he is as a professional. Because of course he fine tunes it, but it's still the same Jimmy who is, off camera.
Sure.
So doing that and actually putting the effort towards understanding and just getting to know someone and getting to know someone on a higher level, you instantly are able to pick up there's certain specific traits and certain things that they do, right? Even the way that people talk. Some people may pause just a little bit longer than others in between their sentence, or just anything like that. And so it got to the point where Jimmy and I knew how to feed off each other, and we knew how to, even like when the teleprompter stopped working, we knew how to continue the conversation because we spent that time getting to know each other and and really assess one another on camera and off camera. And so that's where the chemistry part comes in. And I always tell people, like, you don't even have to be friends with everyone you work with on production. You don't even have to be friends with the hosts, right? But it's your responsibility as a professional to get to know your host and to get to understand how their communication styles are, how they speak, how they certain things that they do, so that you could better feed off of them and they can better feed off of you. It's your responsibility. So, and even the responsibility for people who are broadcasters or hosts, it's your responsibility to try and make someone who you're interviewing as comfortable as possible in the process. Because you making them uncomfortable, it brings down their guard. And usually when you bring down people's guards, you get the best answers out of them. Right. So it's something that I've learned, and it's something that I've had mentors who are, one of my mentors for the longest is Mike Hill, broadcaster for Fox Sports. He's been my mentor literally since I was 17 years old. And he talked to me about ways to really get the best out of not only the hosts that you work with, but get the best out of the guests that you're trying to get the questions from, and the answers from, because that ultimately will show you that you're great at your job. And so that's pretty much why and how I was able to really build that relationship and connection with Jimmy. And it's funny because I think that Jimmy and I did such a great job that I don't even think that people realize that I'm almost 7 years older than Jimmy.
Right. Yeah, no, I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have known that unless you said it. So talk a little bit about, because you had your own podcast, and so you obviously had creative liberty, and you were able to decide to talk about whatever you wanted to talk about when you did that podcast. And I think you have a podcast now. This is a post podcast, or still the same podcast from before Cheddar?
The same
Same one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you have total liberty to talk whatever you want to. When you went to Cheddar, I'm sure some of the stories were vetted out by whoever the staff is that brings the stories to you. How did you determine your format for your podcast and what you wanted to discuss? And then when you went to Cheddar, because Cheddar had a specific format, right? The first 15 minutes were you guys kind of covering the news of esports, and then the next 15 were maybe a one-on-one interview, and then the next 15 I can't remember, and then the last 15 was always you guys playing some crazy new game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about that. How you guys created the content and the format.
So in terms of the podcast, like how we created the format, we didn't want to label ourselves and box ourselves in. I think that naturally people refer to the podcast that I have with my friends as a hip hop podcast, just because we have a lot of relationships in hip hop. But the conversations we were having was more in depth than that. Of course, we talked about music because that's our passion, right? But we would have conversations with some of the notable, renowned people in hip hop and entertainment, talking to them about mental health. Talk to them about, Royce the 5'9" talked about how he dealt with his alcoholism and how he was worried about his penmanship following that, and how, this change about his sobriety has changed him as an artist and as a dad and just so many different ways. And so we always felt like there wasn't really a platform, especially in music, that really allowed artists and individuals to speak about important things without feeling like they may get chopped and screwed. Right. And what I mean by chopped and screwed is like edited out and it's just not a concise conversation. And so we started out with just talking about like music, entertainment stuff, because we all have experience in this space for the most part. And we really talked about things that like people don't know goes on behind the scenes that maybe industry people can't talk about, but we can, because we no longer work in the industry, to provide some actually good insight. But then like, it transformed into us utilizing our platform to highlight just different interests that we have as Black people, right? I feel like, also there's this stereotype, right? It's like, what does the nerd look like, right? Like me and my friends do not look like nerds, but we will geek out on Marvel, we'll geek out on video games, utilizing our platform to speak about important matters that are not only important for the youth to understand, but then also important for us to speak on behalf of the Black community, or speak on topics that matter to the Black community, or those who want to learn. And so it developed over time. And without giving out too information on the strategy, but we actually do have a producer who works with us behind the scenes in terms of setting up appropriate documentation so that we can do the run of show properly. Setting up just certain documents that assist in terms of finding what kind of content, how we should have a conversation, what's the main key takeaway from each episode. And so we actually have a lot of structure to our podcast, but we try to, in the conversation, we try to make it seem like it's just friends talking. Right. But we spend a lot of time like researching and getting the appropriate links and formulating the right questions to ask and the topics to speak on. Because, myself, I've clearly I worked in media for a very long time, but then we also have one of our friends who's been an executive producer on very impactful cultural shows, who helps us behind the scenes. And so, we all have our specialty. And then my friend Brandon, who's the co-founder of the podcast, he works in marketing and digital marketing. And so he provides that aspect into the conversation about how do we best highlight and represent the conversation, not only from a content standpoint, but even just a rollout standpoint. And so we all basically put our input in and from our personal experiences, and then try to do it in the best way. And it's been great because even though like we don't get as much numbers as most people, we've worked with some of the biggest brands, some of the biggest individuals, and we're currently in talks with some of the biggest companies to further these conversations. So yeah, that's kind of the behind stuff.
Yeah. So is that still just a labor of love, or have you guys monetized that? Have you brought in partners and sponsors that are behind that now?
That's actually, we are working on that. We've been like, we've worked with some, good companies and renowned companies. Like we had our first show, and we had, WeWork, they have a department for people of color in WeWork. And so we had a partner, like a a situation with them where we're allowed to host the event there and to continue to like put on more events within their space. And then there's other companies from a monetizing aspect that we've been in talks with and finalizing, like, what does it look like? What do we need to do? And so that's been ongoing. But I mean, we've been doing it for free and because we're all passionate about it for like over 2 years. Yeah, and it's like finally now we're getting the appropriate traction and we've been consistent. Very, like, I would say there's only been like maybe 2 or 3 days that we've taken off.
Is it once? Do you guys do it once a week? And are you doing it? Are you doing it virtually now, or do you have a studio that you're out of?
We do it via Zoom. We've all, for the most part, we've all bought mics so that the audio quality is sound, and then we all have pretty solid cameras, at least enough for like 1080p. Yeah. So we have it set up that way, and then we have a video editor who helps us with implementing the B-roll and having an overlay and everything like that for the visual component. So we made sure to make it as top quality as possible with the conditions that we have currently.
Yeah. And is that your background normally, or do you have a green screen typically that you record in front of? The one you have behind you right now?
Yeah, I just go with, I mean, I ordered a green screen and it hasn't arrived yet. So I just go with what I have. I tell people, like, I'm not even in New York right now. I'm staying with my parents. And so it's kind of like one of those situations, like, I got to make the best out of my situation. So sometimes when I'm doing certain broadcasts, like I'll decorate the back with some things and maybe I'll decorate it more. But when that green screen comes in, oh, trust me, for sure, I'll have the backdrop all set up. But it's been like, things have been taking, I ordered a gaming chair like 3 months ago and it just got here. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. There must be, the system, the infrastructure is just completely overwhelmed right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
Amazon's just crushing it. So the difference between then what you talked about there and going in and working with Cheddar Esports, because I come from a background of owning my own business in the travel industry for 10 or 15 years. When I sold that business, I went into traditional pro sports and worked for the Miami Dolphins. And I always thought pro sports was just fun. Right? I just had this view of it because when you go and you watch a game and it's your favorite team, that's what it's about. And gaming, same thing. A lot of people just think it's fun, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of work being done, and it's a grind. It's not easy. And when I went and worked for the Dolphins, I found that I couldn't just say and do whatever I wanted to. I had to be politically correct. I had to be very, I said at one point, they said, what should we do about our season ticket base? Because we lost like 20,000 season ticket holders in 1 year. Close to that. It was like a massive amount because we had raised ticket prices, and then the team, that was the year they went 1-15. So we lost a massive amount. So I was like, why don't we cut ticket prices in half? And you could have heard a pin drop and like 5 different people look and say, who is this guy? Like, they're like, what? He didn't just actually say that. So I guess my point is, like, now you go into Cheddar.
Yeah.
Right. And Cheddar's got, it's not just the 3 of you guys, your friends. Now you've got some corporate people there. So what was the difference? How was that different? And then just talk a little bit about the format, because I love the format. Yeah,
of course. I'm going to try and explain this without having to just talk about some internal things. But I always spoke my mind. I'd never allowed Cheddar to stifle what I want to say. I've always been someone who knows how to word things appropriately, and I understand when's the right time to say what I need to say, and how to convey that message. And especially on the business side, I know how to have these conversations myself, because like my mom used to be a VP at Merrill Lynch. I have family members who work within corporate America, so I know how to speak to corporate people. But then also there are times when you're even speaking to corporate people where you have to just not worry about the wording and just say it. And so I've always been someone where it's like, listen, if you're going to work with me, I'm going to speak up for what is right, and I'm going to make it very clear. And if you have a problem with that, that's on you. That's not on me. And that's always been what the viewpoint I've had, because I can't, for me, especially if I'm a public figure and if I'm a model, I'm a role model for people and I'm representation, I have a responsibility myself as someone who's a public figure who has a big platform. Like, I think sometimes public figures forget that, yes, you are big, but also it's the people that have supported you that have helped to make you big. right? So there is a sense of responsibility that you have to have. And so, whether it is us speaking on certain things and maybe, higher ups at Cheddar didn't want us to speak on it. And it's like, well, I'm still going to speak on it. Or just the way that we went about things, right? And I think that the best companies are the ones that will give the input of corporate, but allow the people who know what they're talking about to do what they do best. Mm-hmm. And some of the best companies are ones that they may be corporate and they may be getting involved in esports and gaming, and they may realize like, hey, we don't understand esports and gaming, but we're willing to work with you. Like, this is what we understand from the business side. So we'll help you with understanding on, we'll help to like amplify, and we'll help to understand what you guys, what your knowledge base is. And so I would say that definitely, I'll be honest, and I can say this, especially now that I don't work at Cheddar, it wasn't always easy. It wasn't always easy conveying certain ideas or conversations with those in the corporate side, because they didn't fully understand esports and gaming. Mm-hmm. And they also didn't, and even just certain things like understanding the Twitch platform, understanding certain things. But there were people in Cheddar who, even though they didn't understand, they really did try their best to work with us. But anytime you're dealing with corporate, or anytime you're dealing with higher ups that don't understand the industry that you work in, you're going to get pushback. You're going to get certain things, and you have to speak up. You can't just like let it just, no, a no is a no. Well, why is a no? Like, you're telling me no, but do you actually understand why you're saying no? Right. And so I've always been that way. And I think definitely more than ever, especially with the recent events now, I've been speaking up a lot more, not only about my own personal experience. Like, I've been telling people, I've had people that, told me I couldn't do broadcasting because I didn't fit the mold. And I don't know if that was an implicit bias in terms of because I'm a Black woman, or because I have short hair, or because I'm not super feminine. Like, there's definitely companies that have done that in terms of broadcasting. And so, and there's even, certain companies that we know personally that haven't done a great job. And so even though like I've been always speaking up behind the scenes, and also, in front too, but also behind the scenes, but it's like now even more than ever, I've just been sticking firm to what I believe is right, and really speaking up to change things. And it's important that we change, especially on the broadcast perspective too.
Yeah, it's amazing the path that you've taken. And I know you have like a saying that I want to touch on at the end about the path, and you paved your path. But Can you talk to us a little bit about Cheddar? You left Cheddar.
Yeah.
Okay. So you left Cheddar, and now you're doing things that you want to do.
Yeah.
And probably being selective. I'm wondering if they come to you, a lot of them, if they come to you based on your body of work now, or if you have a team, CAA, that's out there looking for stuff for you guys. And then like over the last 2, 3, 6 months, what have you been involved with? Kind of give us a couple of things. I thought I saw Tech for COVID, and I know Ryan Johnson well. I don't know if you worked with Ryan on that or who you worked with, but I'd love to know a couple of the things that you've worked on just recently. And then let's talk a little bit about what you've got on the calendar upcoming.
Yeah. So my CAA and my team, we've been working really hard in terms of, but not only just, work. Of course, I'm making sure that I'm getting the appropriate projects and everything to keep myself financially afloat right now, because I don't have a home yet. We are currently working on that, but also working on charity initiatives, like you mentioned, Tech for COVID. I work directly with Ryan. It's been super awesome, and also figure out what more can be done within this space. There's been working with eFuse. They, in several like content opportunities with them in terms of doing interviews for the purpose of educating their user base. I've been they've been utilizing, I've been utilizing the access that we have with certain higher ups like Mike Sepso, Nicola Pickett, and a few others, and taking their information, their knowledge, and providing and giving it to those who may not have access to those people readily right now. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing a lot of like educational, informational content for eFuse, and then obviously like getting involved in their events. We recently did one for Gunna and 300. I hosted that along with Chris Puckett, phenomenal guy. And then I've also been been working on some other charity initiatives. I can't really talk to them yet because they haven't been announced, but I've been having a lot of conversations in terms of charitable initiatives, and then also just projects for, now that I don't work for Cheddar, I've been also doing some projects for a few esports organizations. And so they haven't been announced yet, but you guys will see some of the programs that I've been that orgs have reached out to me for content purposes, hosting, etc. From top esports organizations. So, and it's been great because I've been having conversations with all of them in terms of how we can improve the industry as a whole too. So not only am I able to work with them, but I'm also actively having these conversations with them and along and also along with a few of the members in these specific orgs to figure out what we could do to make esports and gaming as a whole a better environment, not only for our fellow Black gamers and casters and et cetera, but for everyone, especially the underserved and under-resources communities. And so that's what I've been focusing a lot on. And I'm also working on, I'm working on 2 initiatives myself that I'm getting, I'm having conversations with certain companies to support it. That's all I can say. One of the initiatives is going to be known soon. The other one, I'm working on announcing it within the next 3 weeks. But the main purpose behind these initiatives is to not only educate. Educational reform is such an important thing when it comes to esports, but then also assisting with that accessibility, resource, and financial support. So I've been working on getting that with this. One of them is more educational based, and it's free for everyone. The other one is also, it's free, but it's not just educational. It's also that accessibility, that resources and spotlight. And that's pretty much all I can say. But I've been working with my agents at CA. I've been working with my management. I've been working with various different companies that I have personal relations with certain individuals in them, and just figuring out like having something that's more concise that we can really impact and change the industry. So that's what I've been working on.
Yeah, it's very vague.
I know. I can't say them yet because they haven't been announced. Or
I know, but as you're saying them, I'm like, I'm guessing. Like in my mind, just the way you painted the picture, I have some guesses that afterwards, after we talk, I'll send some messages to you. But having said all that, are you now, because of the pandemic, are you still doing everything at home digitally, or are you actually traveling to places to do some of these things, whether it's for a pro team, whether it's for a cause? I know most of the cause-related stuff is virtual right now, but would you jump on a plane and travel someplace right now if it was safe?
Yeah, keyword, if it was safe, absolutely. I think, because another thing I have to do is like, even with the companies I've been working with, I told them that I have to be very mindful because I have a mother who's at risk, who has health issues. And the last thing I want to do is bring COVID back into the household. So for me, as long as there are precautionary measures done, like there's some work that I'm actually doing in New York, and I'm going to be traveling to New York, but I also make sure that those people that I work with are setting those precautionary measures. So I myself can stay healthy. And even with me, like I have asthma, so I'm even still a little bit part of that at-risk group. So right now I've been doing things remotely, and I've been mostly requesting for things to be done remotely, or if it's not remote, making sure that it is done in controlled environments. And so that's pretty much most of the stuff. But yeah, I don't mind traveling if it's safe, and if things are implemented so that I myself can keep safe, as well as making sure I can keep my mother safe as well.
Right. Yeah, you've got to be safe. I mean, that's just smart. You said something that I'm very close to, because again, I mentioned my wife, she's an actor, but she's also very much into mindfulness. And you said something about being mindful, just being mindful about these decisions. But mindfulness, that word of mindfulness now, and that a practice and that approach in gaming, are you seeing that? Because just like authenticity is a buzzword that's been around for whatever now, 2 or 3 years, right? That's just, everybody's got to be authentic. Well, mindfulness seems to me like it's becoming very much a buzzword as well in the community, because it has to deal with mental health, and it has to deal with raging, it has to deal with peak performance and elite performance. There's so many things about being mindful. So you just said the word, so it just kind of made me think about that. What are your feelings about mindfulness and how it applies to esports and gaming?
So mindfulness can be applied in various different ways. I think one, like right now, I've been telling people I know there's so many people and allies that want to have conversations right now with fellow, Black content creators and streamers and gamers in this space. But, and I know some of them have have had, you know, that have reached out and, you know, they've had those people say that they don't want to talk. And those allies, you know, they felt upset, but I had to tell them to be mindful because I'm like, you know, the Black community is going through a very emotional moment right now. I said, you have to realize that not only emotional in the sense of the protests that are going on, the police brutality, but also the fact that we are seeing people in our own circles and how they are talking about the situation. And some people are showing their true colors and some people aren't being supportive. And sometimes we're being attacked just for speaking on our own personal experiences, right? I told some friends, like, it is tiring that as a community, those of us who are Black in the esports and gaming community are talking about diversity, talking about, you know, not having people in online gaming, like, say the N-word and those people getting banned or getting punched. Like, we're tired of having to talk about it, but as we're talking about it, we're constantly getting discredited for our own personal experiences. And people try to utilize implicit bias or just anything else to say why we are wrong. So I was like, imagine all of that frustration and emotion. And so it's understandable why your friend or person may not want to talk to you right now about it. I said, you have to be mindful of what's going on. And on top of that too, we're in a pandemic still. Like, people are just mentally and emotionally all over the place. So people just have to be mindful of that and mindful of, you know, if someone doesn't answer an email right away, it's okay. Like, do a follow-up, you know, maybe check on them and see how they're doing. Cause maybe they're taking a break, right? Like, for me, even I've had to take more of a break from social media as part of my self-care regimen. So there are plenty of messages that, like, I haven't even been able to respond to, or I haven't even responded to an email, but it has nothing to do with me not wanting to respond. It's just, I myself, as someone who is speaking up and utilizing the platform to speak up, like, I am getting a lot of crap in return, and it's a lot. And so I have to take that self-care mentally and emotionally for myself if I want to still be in a good, just like I said, emotional and mental state to continue to make the change, to continue to do the work that I'm supposed to be doing. Like, so I think that mindfulness is people, you know, and I always say you have to step outside of yourself and to view the situation and understand, not everyone's going to straight up tell you they're not doing okay. Not everyone's going to tell you, hey, this person came into my stream and, you know, they had a on George Floyd next username, which there have been people who've done that, and it affected me a lot. Like, not everyone's going to say it. Just as long as you are letting people know that you're there, that they're there if you need them. Understand about people delaying in texts or messages or anything like that. Like, it's just about being mindful. And it's not just about the Black community. There are people who have lost family members to COVID, you know, we have to keep that. We have to remember that too. So it's just, mindfulness is more of just stepping outside of yourself and lending that open floor of support for the person. If they want help, they'll come to you, right? But allowing them to know that you're there for them no matter what, and you're understanding. I think that we as people, especially when we talk to people, we don't listen for the purpose of understanding. We tend to listen for the purpose of reacting, right? So even that mindfulness in the conversations that we're having, listen for the purpose of understanding. You know, view the actions of people for the purpose of understanding. Mm-hmm. You may not have to fully agree with how they go about it, but at least have that level of understanding that, hey, this person's probably going through a lot of emotional and mental things right now. So, you know, yeah, maybe the way that they responded to you wasn't the best. And if they weren't so nice about it, they should apologize for it later on, but at least be understanding. That's where that mindfulness comes from. And it's about, mindfulness is, I've had these conversations, and it's like, mindfulness is less about you. It's more about that other person. The mindfulness when you start making it about you, then you're not being mindful at all.
Yeah. No, I thought that it was, the way you stated that was really, really strong. Stepping, first of all, outside of yourself, because that's the big challenge, right? We're always all in our own story. So stepping out of that story and being aware. And I can't imagine, you know, I'm a white guy, you know, so I think about this sometimes, and like just going to work and taking care of my family is it's a battle every day. I mean, I love it. I have fun. I am very optimistic. I'm a very positive person, but I couldn't imagine the exhaustion. Like you said, it's tiring. It's got to be exhausting I'm going to work and I'm doing these things, and now I've got to fight this and fight this and fight this. I get exhausted a lot of times just reading it, reading about stuff. I get tired. I can't imagine. So, first of all, I wanted to thank you, when almost coming up to the end, but I wanted to thank you for taking the time, because it means a lot to me that you took the time to be with me today and be with, listeners and our audience and share, because it's really important right now, the message that you just shared right there and what we're talking about. And I wanted to kind of end with, because I know you've got a lot of things coming up, but this was, I think it was on your personal website, erinasimon.com. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And it says, and I think it's quote unquote for me anyway, pave your own path. You never know where it could lead you. So if that's something that you say, where do you see that path? You're only 28, you're super young. Mm-hmm. You've already got this really cool career. You're working with so many things in the entertainment, music, esports, gaming, like great industries. And I think you have a great platform, and you're thinking very deeply about not just gaming esports, but how can I make a direct impact on things that are happening today that are super important. So having said that, and that's your path, where do you see your path leading you? And I know you can't be a Nostradamus and completely prognosticate.
Well, obviously continue on with like elevating my broadcast career. So definitely bringing it onto a bigger level. I see myself developing my own charity and nonprofit. And then eventually, as I get older, I do view myself and see myself going behind the scenes and being in an executive position within esports and in the gaming industry. That's where you'll continue to make that change. And I know I'm going to get there. I'm not worried, concerned about that. But that's where I do see myself. I very much yes, I want to be in front of the camera as long as I can, because representation in front of the camera is so important. Even looking at that's why I look up to people like Serena Williams and Venus Williams, and that representation they have in tennis. You can see the trickling effect because you've seen the women of color and the Black women who've entered into tennis because of them. I feel like for me, I can help to create that pathway opportunity by my relationships, by speaking up, and usually my platform, and then also being a face that others can see when they're like, oh my gosh, there's someone just like me, because that's so important, because I grew up not really having that representation in certain areas. And we're seeing that it's becoming better, but it needs to improve. So definitely that. And then change happens when you have these leadership people and these leadership roles in business. And so I do see myself eventually later on when I'm older moving into the business, and my aim is an executive position within this industry, so I can continue to make the necessary change that I need for youth moving forward.
Thank you so much. Yes,
thank you as well. Awesome. If there's anything else you need, please let me know.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Ciao.
I'd like to thank Erin for sharing her time, experience, and knowledge with us today. Like so many of the guests on the show, she is where she is today and continues to make a big splash in gaming and esports simply due to making it happen. Sure, she is very talented and continues to grow and get better at her craft every day, but it's her fearlessness and willingness to take risks that stood out to me. That and her vision of being a Renaissance woman and paving her own path. She really is unstoppable. You can listen to Erin again now, and you can also find timestamp segments of the show, links to her social pages, and more information about our company, projects, and media in the show notes. If you enjoyed our discussion, please let us know. Continue the conversation with me across all social platforms and become a part of the Ultimate Gamer community today by subscribing at ultimategamer.com. We release a new show every day of the week, Monday through Friday, so be the first to join us for some outstanding upcoming guests and or dive back into the library of previous Level Up pods to hear from some of the most brilliant minds in the space. Experts like CEO of Skillshot Media and chairman of the Atlanta Esports Alliance, Todd Harris, co-founder of MKM Group and president of Rumble Gaming, Evan Cubis, and co-founder of Cut and Sew and Zoned, Matt Hillman, just to name a few. You can find all of these pods and more on the Ultimate Gamer website, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your pods. And finally, please like, rate, and review the show. It helps us reach the gaming community to spread the word and share the wisdom of our guests, as well as some of the most thought-provoking stories in the industry. Shout out, as always, to the Ultimate Gamer. I look forward to being with you on the next Level Up podcast.